Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mark Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5,
Lasers, check.
4,
Particle beam, check.
3,
Photon bolts, check.
2,
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley. This is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start. Welcome to another thrilling, chilling episode of Docking Bay 77 podcast as we cover Universal Horror Classics. Turn down the lights, get out your garlic, and be ready for a thrilling hour of entertainment. Or so. Here we go. Tonight, who do we have with us? Well, we have to give a shout out to our own Invisible Man, Eric Dirth, who had to skip this episode due to a medical complication. We can still see him, but you would not be able to hear him. So we want to give a big shout out to our friends. Get better, buddy. We will listen to you next time. But I also want to thank my last-minute replacement, who, like Una O'Connor, is always a scream. I want to welcome Amber Lewis. Thanks, Amber, for dropping by.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. That's the best Una I can do. I didn't want to scare people.
I appreciate that. The sound meter probably would have gone bazonk, and we would have just blown out a speaker or something. Anyway, and of course, back the Igor to my mad scientist through all these Universal episodes. Thank you, John Wright, for being here tonight. How are you, John?
I'm doing good. Happy to talk about this one.
Fantastic. Me too. So tonight we are going to be covering The Invisible Man, 1933, with Claude Rains and James Whale directing.
We'll begin with the Reign of Terror. Run squealing in terror at the touch of my little invisible finger. But why? Why do it, Griffin? I had to teach them a lesson. But Griffin, it's ghastly. Just a scientific experiment at first. That's all. To do something no other men in the world had done. Suddenly I realized the power I held. The power to rule. To make the world grovel at my feet. We'll soon put the world right now, Kip. You and
I will get us started with the source material. Of course, it is based on the book by H.G. Wells, a favorite of this podcast. In previous episodes, we have talked about his War of the Worlds. We have talked about The Time Machine. And in fact, we even talked about a movie in which he was a character time after time. So welcome back, Herbert, to the show. This was one of his earliest books. It was a very short novel. At this point, he'd only written The Time Machine and The Island of Dr. Moreau. And a year before War of the Worlds. It was a very productive period for him. He was writing 2 to 3 books a year. But this was his 5th book. It was just a novella. It started off as a short story, and then he kind of reworked it and made it a little bit longer. It's still an afternoon's read and very entertaining. His inspiration was because, all these English dudes going to Oxford and whatnot, Plato's Republic, and also a Gilbert and Sullivan poem from the Babs Ballads about the perils of invisibility. One couplet that made me laugh said, "Old Peter vanished like a shot, but then his suit of clothes did not." Anyway, so that and Plato were the inspirations for this. The novella is a quick read. There are significant changes from the book to the film we got, although remarkably, the first chapter was basically shot like verbatim with like the book on the director's lap, it seems, because it's very, very close. But then it kind of spins out into James Whale and Universal's idea of what a good time is, and we do like that. One of the biggest changes, the drug monocaine does not appear in the book at all, which brought his insanity on. In the book, it is just, he's actually already cracked before the invisibility happens through his kind of monomania, not monocaine, but monomania, about trying to discover this invisibility serum. But that was okay. H.G. Wells had script approval for this film. So he liked that idea of the drug bringing the insanity on. The book itself had a fantastic, ambiguous ending that left the door open to sequels. Wells was not only a clever writer, but also was a very smart man in terms of commercial potential. And this one, he has a kind of a wacky sidekick that he does not have in the film. And at the end of the book, of course, spoiler, Griffin dies, the Invisible Man dies, but the wacky sidekick finds his notebooks and is poring over them, trying to figure out what they say and what it all means as the book ends. The film also added, of course, a love interest. Lovely Gloria Stewart and her dad, they are not in the book either. But Dr. Kemp is the friend who is kind of the love triangle person with Gloria Stewart. He appears, but only midway through the book by an act of coincidence, and was an old school friend of Mr. Griffin. But other than that, fairly true to the book, which was nice. That doesn't happen all the time anymore. But it was very, very popular, although it wasn't the first of Wells's films to be filmed. It has had many films since. This was one of the earliest, the 33 version, but so many adaptations ever since, up to just a couple of years back when Elizabeth Moss was over the title in The Invisible Man, and the poor Invisible Man's credit was invisible. I don't even know who played him, but anyway, some English dude. The most faithful one in my research, I understand that BBC did one, of course they did, in the 90s, that is a multi-part miniseries, and it's supposed to be really, really accurate to the book. So I'm going to look for that one myself. But it has had a lot of adaptations, and of course, the idea of the Invisible Man, whether it's Wells's Invisible Man or not, the invisibility trope has been with us ever since Wells came up with it, and of course, launched even more so by this film.
Well, and that was something that I discovered. I went into like a deep dive, and I thought, oh, I'll watch all the Invisible Man kind of movies. And so I Googled, like, I could only think of a couple. So I Googled, like, what am I forgetting? And the broad definition of an Invisible Man movie, like, includes Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And Predator.
Yeah.
So then I was left, like, debating with myself all day, like, what defines an Invisible Man movie? Like, how do you narrow it down?
There is I'm forgetting the title. There is a hilarious little bit of a larger movie. Yes, it was Amazon Women on the Moon.
On the Moon, yeah.
Oh, yes.
87. Ed Begley has a little section through that
oh my God.
He does an Invisible Man spoof that is, if you don't watch any other Invisible Man, watch that one because it is hilarious. But did you land on any, Amber? Did you end up watching any of them?
I did. I watched Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Chevy Chase.
From 1993, which I remember loving. Did not love it as much 20 years on. And then I watched the Elizabeth Moss Invisible Man, and I watched Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon.
Nice. How was the recent one with Elizabeth Moss? And
I love that one, but it's
very good.
It's not really, for me, an Invisible Man movie. It's really like a horror movie with invisibility.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah.
John, does that work for you?
Yeah, it's pretty similar in tone to Hollow Man. Hollow Man's pretty dark too.
Yeah, but for me, like, you have to take a potion for it to count. Like, that's my criteria for an Invisible Man.
All right.
So I feel like Hollow Man is closer because he's injected.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's still a serum. It's just
yes.
not. Yeah.
He just doesn't drink it,
In the Elizabeth Moss version, it's all done technologically. He has a suit that has like thousands of little mini cameras on it, and it causes him to blend into the background. It's actually a
great
cool
movie.
Yeah, and it's a great movie.
Well, Wells's book does that a little bit with this idea of how the light works, and in fact, the Invisible Man character in the Wells novel is an albino. It is revealed toward the end of the book, which is one reason why he became fascinated and like, can I become like more pale and more and you know, and so it was the idea of using bending light and using light in a way that would make you not be able to be seen, rather than just some very tropical, you know, plant extract from South America that we always seem to get in everything.
Yeah. Unobtainium.
Yes, exactly. So John, tell us about how this movie jumped from a novella into a film classic.
Well, following the success of Dracula, it was suggested to Universal to acquire the rights to H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man to be the follow-up. Instead, the studio opted to go with Frankenstein, and while shooting Frankenstein, they bought the rights for $10,000, which is somewhere in the equivalent of $250,000 in today's money. In an interesting twist, Wells got final approval of the script, which I don't think any Universal creator had prior to that. Universal had also acquired the rights to a novel called The Murderer Invisible, and they intended to mix some of those elements in with H.G. Wells' tales. Boris Karloff had signed a 5-year contract at this time with the studio and was originally intended to be the title character. However, due to some financial issues, it was, after all, the Great Depression. The studio was bankrupt and had laid off a majority of their staff, minus some executives. He was essentially loaned out to other studios because they couldn't afford to pay his contract. As Robert mentioned, James Whale was set to direct, but he originally left the project after not wanting to be labeled as a quote-unquote horror director. He eventually returned. Robert Florey was next in line to direct and had a script which included such plot elements as invisible rats, an invisible octopus, and the blowing up of Grand Central Station. Universal was unwilling to wait on Florey to work out these elements of the script and moved on with Karloff to film The Dark Old House. During this time, Whale had returned to the project, and Karloff had been loaned off to other studios, as I said. Whale submitted his own version of the script, which was a mix of The Phantom of the Opera and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with religious overtones. The script was rejected by Wells, and Whale left the project once again. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes drama on this movie. Also, during this time, Universal was experiencing serious financial troubles and had closed the studio for a period on February 13th, 1933, leaving only the executives and a skeleton crew on the payroll. Whale was laid off for 3 months prior to the filming. Yet another script was being completed and announced in June of that year by industry trade papers. It was announced in June of that year by the trade papers that Karloff was no longer attached to the project, citing the salary issues I had mentioned earlier. Wells finally approved the script, written by R.C. Sheriff, that included changes such as the drug called monocaine, that not only made the character invisible, but would drive him into insanity. Wells stated that the invisible lunatic would make folks sit up more quickly than a sane man. Claude Rains was considered for the role by Wells, who had met him in London in 1923. Universal originally discouraged this, wanting a more known actor in this role. Whale had tracked down a screenplay Rains had done, or a screen test Rains had done for a movie entitled A Bill of Divorcement that was reportedly called terrible by Rains himself. Rains stated he did not know what he was doing, had no technique, and was carrying on as if he was in an enormous theater, which was exactly what Whale was looking for. Ultimately, Universal approved the casting choice. Principal photography began on June of 1933 and lasted until late August. Special effects took another 2 months and were filmed in the utmost secrecy by Head of Tricks. Yes, that is indeed his name, because special effects was indeed not a title, John P. Fulton. And we'll get more into how the effects are done, because it's a very lengthy and honestly quite amazing process for the time.
Well, and these effects like hold up.
Yeah. It was initially, they filmed, it's a very, very complicated process. Fulton said that, stating they'd been shot against a completely black set with the walls and floors covered with black velvet to make it non-reflective. The actor was then covered head to foot with black velvet tights and wore whatever clothes he required for the scene. With this negative, a print was made and a duplicate negative was made to serve as mats for printing. Then with an ordinary printer, they made a composite first printing of the positive of the background in normal action using the negative mat to mask the area where the Invisible Man was to move. Fulton said the principal difficulty of this was matching the lighting on the visible close shots with the general lighting used in the scenes and fixing small imperfections such as scenes with eye holes, which were touched up in the film frame by frame with a brush and opaque dye. Fulton wrote, "We photographed thousands of feet of film and many quote unquote takes of different scenes, and approximately 4,000 feet of film received an individual hand-marked treatment in some degree, making approximately 63,000 frames of the film which were individually retouched in this manner."
Holy cow.
That's amazing. And it does work. I was watching, I watched my Universal Legacy DVD, and then I had read that there
Bragger.
was what? Yeah.
Oh, no, I was calling you a bragger for having
bragger.
the,
Sorry.
the really nice set. I don't have the really nice set. I'm jealous.
But then I found out it's not as nice a set as you would think, so you don't have to worry about me. In 2012 or 13, they went back and remastered them all again and did even more. And that version, they actually found some missing frames and some negatives that didn't have some of the scratches. So the one that I watched, although very well restored, there was even a better one that I was able to get from the library and watch that was even sharper. But even so, with really just pristine prints and all the framing and everything, there are so few times you can like see a wire or see a thing in the movie. The pacing is so fast, you're not paying attention to it anyway. It was really because I was watching it again that I wanted to see like, okay, how are they doing this? Now are they doing that? But it still holds up. It is worth everything Mr. Fulton did. Did you find out, John? I read a thing that I heard somebody, I think it was Karloff's daughter, said part of the reason he did not do Invisible Man was because all you do is hear him. You don't really see him. And because Karloff had that lisp he had, that sort of Boris Karloff lisp, they decided that to listen to him without seeing him, especially without all his cool makeup and everything, would not be great. So they wanted someone with a better speaking voice, which indirectly led to Rains.
Which is ironic because Rains was a stutterer for most of his life.
Yes.
And he actually invented his own quote unquote accent for this. He really worked on his elocution, which is something I need to do, and pronunciation. and it shows because he hits those R's and they almost have a roll to them when he says anything with an R. And I also heard that, like you said, Karloff wanted this, but he also wanted to be seen, and so did Rains. And the director had to tell him, like, you're not going to be seen, which is really funny. I mean, he basically pulls a Robert Downey Jr. here, where he's never on screen. It's just his voice until the last scene of the movie, basically. And
although unlike some of our modern day things where that happens, Rain did all the acting. I mean, that was him under all the bandages and smoking jackets. That was him. Which I think if they did it nowadays, if it was Robert Downey Jr. or somebody, they would have had some extra or some stunt guy or something do all the stuff, and then they would have sat in a booth for an afternoon with their tea, just doing their lines and being cool. But I think it's part of why the character is so interesting is that it was Rains doing his own acting while he was doing the speaking. Any other fun production notes on that, or can we move on to some favorites?
I watched the behind the scenes making of short that is with our box set. It's just full of extras. And my favorite scene is the scene when he's getting ready for bed and he unwraps the ace bandage.
Yeah.
They shot that 4 times.
Yeah.
They shot it once with what was going to be behind him and then once with him with the bandage. And the way they showed how they layered that in, I just thought was fascinating.
Is that the scene where he's in front of the mirror?
Yeah.
And it's like the mirror was filmed and the wall was filmed and he was filmed and his back was
Yes.
And that's one I think it's maybe 30 seconds of film, but the tedium of having to shoot it 4 times and then marry that together, okay, now compound that times the whole movie itself was Really
Well,
impressive.
and they were smart because with the special effects, and I mentioned this when we talked about Mary Poppins in one of our episodes, where Walt Disney knew, and he learned it in the film biz, so he may have learned it from Mr. Fulton or somebody else. But when you're doing special effects, shake up how you do it. So sometimes it's a physical effect. Sometimes now it'd be CG, or back then it would have been like an optical thing, like a double exposure, so that the audience can't quite get a handle on it, because if they saw little wires in the last scene, but there's no little wires in this scene, they're like, well, what? And then, so, and I think this movie does a nice job of that optical printing where they use multi-layers. And then also just, I had read that some of the scenes just, that were kind of in the shadows and things, they just put like black apparel or black clothing or whatever over the parts of Rains that were supposed to be invisible. And then he had his Band-Aids, but it was the way it was filmed with the lighting, the black just kind of didn't register. So it could be nothing instead of just seeing the contours of his face in a black ski mask or whatever. So it's so smart how they did all that. I think it's one reason why the movie stands up and is not kind of a laughing stock, because so many of the movies from that era, and even from the 1950s, where you're just like, the giant ant is not fooling anyone. Like this is laughable. And this movie still works. You still can buy into it.
And ironically, this movie has a lot of comedy in it, and it's intentional comedy, unlike the previous two we've talked about that's got a lot of comedy in it that's really not intentional.
And I think like some of the best horror movies are, like American Werewolf in London, or I can't think of another example off the top of my head, but
Shaun of the Dead.
They have, or Cabin in the Woods, we just watched the other night, have such a strong thread of comedy. Like those two are very tight together, because when you're scared, a lot of times you laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And better if it's intentional than otherwise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, James Whale had a wicked sense of humor. All of his movies, A Bride of Frankenstein, which we won't be covering in this series, but his other film, he started to cut loose a little bit. Bride of Frankenstein is hilarious.
Yes.
And kind of like this movie too, where he puts in these little comic bits of business, or these kind of almost absurdist, nonsensical things that just are funny and delightful, and maybe take your mind off how preposterous the plot is, or whatever. But Whale directed, war movies and melodramas, and of course his horror movies are what he's known for. He directed Showboat, and there's sly little bits of humor and whimsy in almost everything he directed. But it does go. I think it is, to your point, John, absolutely stands out most in this film compared to the other ones we've watched, and most of the other Universal horror movies of that era. Till we get to Abbott and Costello, but that's a whole other thing.
That was totally wicked!
Was there anything else that we haven't got to yet, Amber, that you just thought was totally wicked?
The best part of the movie is Una O'Connor.
Well, no, we're not the favorite character yet. Are you going to say we're not the favorite character?
She's
okay,
but she is this movie. I love her so much.
Yeah.
She is the reason I watch this movie.
She is so interesting too. She's known anymore for her shrieking, giddy, crazy maid servants and housekeepers and all this, mainly through her work with James Whale, who purportedly you can hear him laughing in some of the takes that in the film, because he just thought he would just wind her up and just say, "Do it," and she would just shriek and dither and collapse and scream again, and he just thought she was the funniest damn thing, and he was right. But no, she was an Irish actress, and on stage in Ireland, and then when she came to New York, West End, London, then New York, did everything. She could play anything apparently, and she finally came to Hollywood. She was getting older. Her stage career was kind of drying up a little bit. So she came to Hollywood, and this was either her first or second movie. It was one of the earliest movies she did. And Whale loved her. He just thought she was a kick in the pants. And so
she found her niche, she
Definitely.
shows up. She's always a maid or the housekeeper, or
although it's interesting,
lady next door that's nosy and.
Well, but you got to watch from this same year, 1933, Noel Coward's Cavalcade, which was a big musical, 3 hour spectacle about England and how great England is and all this that he wrote to be patriotic before the wars came. But it was a pageant. There was like a cast of 300, and it played in London, played in New York. Una had a main role in that, and she played a role of a housekeeper, imagine, who through circumstance works her way up and becomes basically like a proper lady. And she was so fantastic in the stage version, they actually brought her. I think that was what they brought her out for. And then she did this with it. But she did the film version, and it's amazing to see her play a refined, well-to-do, well-spoken, calm, cultured person. She's almost unrecognizable.
Damn!
You know, but she found a groove, and she ran with it, and God bless Una O'Connor for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
all
just
righty.
absolutely adore her. And I love her first entrance when she comes out and she's all like gussied up in that sparkly top, and like, what are you wearing? Why do you have diamonds? Like, what's even happening?
Well, and she gets that little bit of a star entrance where the door opens and her head comes out sideways. And yeah, she's in like this like bouffant and this like high collar. I also get such a kick out of, I don't know if it was her idea or who came up with the business, but every time she comes out of her little office and she's behind the check-in desk, she has to open like all these different like trap doors and flaps and doors.
This one goes up and this one goes over, and
yeah, and it's like, and she just works that stuff like she does it without even thinking, but it is always hilarious. He's like, "Can I see my room?" And she's like, "Flip, flip, 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 push, flip, flip," you know, just like whipping through this little like idiotic, pointless maze of countertops and doorways. I don't know. She is great.
Yep.
I really appreciated that this movie, unlike the last one we talked about, Frankenstein, it's an origin story, but it doesn't feel compelled to give you the origin story. You start off, the Invisible Man is invisible. Just deal with it. You know, you'll find out how it happened throughout the course of the film. And I wish filmmakers, especially with the stuff that I tend to like, which are comic book movies, would give the audience's intelligence some credit. Most of us know, if we're going to see a movie, 99.9% of the audience there knows what that main character is about or has a general idea of what the movie is about, especially when a movie is called something like The Invisible Man. You know it's going to be about a man that you can't see. And I really appreciated that. I appreciated, like I said earlier, the humor. And I appreciated that this one, I noticed that the pacing, the overall performances, the camera movements and stuff, there has been a significant improvement in all of that since Dracula. We had a lot of static shots. We had a lot of, one camera shots. I'm assuming we had one camera shots in this as well, but they were framed better and they showed more of what was going on behind the scenes. They weren't focused just on one particular character. You got like minor characters and stuff, and got to see what they were doing, and it made it feel more like a movie and less like a play.
Yeah, like he gave all of those supporting people in the pub, like the chief of police that the Invisible Man kills, like he gets one shot, where he's being strangled by this Invisible Man, and he makes the most of that death, like. And they all get like their little moment where they get to really like, this is my thing, I'm gonna stretch it out, and he really lets them fly.
The guy that's playing the piano in the opening, and then
oh my gosh,
turns around and like everybody's applauding, and then the drunk next to him throws a slug into the piano slot, and it starts the coin slot, and it starts playing on its own as he has to turn around real quick. There's no point to that, but it sets the mood of what's going on in this little tavern or whatever it is so well. It reminded me a lot of what you had mentioned just a couple minutes ago, Amber, American Werewolf in London, where they arrive on the moors, and the minute those two guys enter that little pub, the mood shifts.
Record scratch.
Right. And
everybody stops talking.
Right. And the minute the Invisible Man enters the pub, boom, the mood shifts again. Everybody's on guard. They're no longer having fun. It's like, who is this outsider? Number one, why is he bandaged from head to toe? But number two,
I love it when they come back down and they're mid conversation.
Oh, they have all those
hypothesizing.
Reasons? Yes,
like he's snowblind, or
he hit his head escaping from prison, so he's
Yeah, I love how that's to your point about the angles, John. Yeah, I think Wales really was coming into his own with this. We saw it in Bride of Frankenstein starting, but yeah, there's a couple great shots from the top of the stairs showing the entryway, especially like when he's running down and we see the grandfather clock tip over and with something else, you know. And, but then there's that wonderful shot across the top of the big house where all the people are linking arms, all the cops with the torches.
Oh my gosh.
And
yes.
we're looking at, like, so you really get the scope of, there's like a lot of people out there, and they are, you know, and it's just very ingenious. I think he finally kind of started to learn to use the camera rather than just set it on a tripod and record, but actually how to utilize it for bits. And some of the scenes with Claude Rains, holy cow. One of his big epiphanies where the camera is real low and he's like towering over the camera and gesturing and is so strong and powerful. It's a great shot. And, you know, if it had just been like a medium shot on him, just, you know, at eye level, it would have not had the same impact at all. But it just was fantastic. So yeah, I in my list of things I liked, I thought the camera angles definitely, and just the filmicness of this compared to the other ones. I also have to give a shout out to seeing Dwight Fry, who we saw in both Frankenstein and Dracula. He has a little tiny cameo.
Hello, Renfield.
Yes, exactly. He's escaped and is a reporter now. Yes. But yeah, nice to see him again. And one of the last films we'll see him in this series. And then one thing, it was just a detail, but I really got a kick out of it this time because I hadn't really paid attention before because we're so used to kind of the iconic vision of him with those cool wraparound glasses and the band-aid and everything. But almost every time that they show him, his band-aids are different, like how it's wrapped or how it's fastened. There's that really cool one where there's like safety pins at the bottom that are kind of like make him look kind of robotic or punk or something. And I thought, well, that's great because they didn't just buy the slip-on mask that he just pops on for every shot. I mean, it looks like every damn day this guy had to grab a bunch of gauze and wind up his head. And you know what? I'm out of safety pins. I'm going to tuck it in and behind my ear this time or whatever. And that gave it a real, even though we're talking about invisibility and whatnot, but gave it a real reality where it wasn't just he put on the Invisible Man mask or the whatever makeup and was always the same. It looked different and it was interesting because it reminded me like of a skull on one occasion. It was sort of robotic looking another time with when it had the pins and things in it sticking out. And it was interesting how I'm not sure how deliberate it was or whether it was just happenstance, but it made it visually interesting, but it also made you buy that this guy has to like bundle up and do all this stuff every time he wants to, you know, cross the street, which I thought was a really nice detail that grounded was basically a fanciful story, a preposterous story into kind of a reality, which I liked about it a lot.
No, sir, I didn't like it.
Well, every horror movie, of course, has something that is awful. Were there any no sirs we don't like it about this one?
Clarence Oddbody trying to convince me he's a scientist.
I was waiting for that to come up.
Not really my jam. And the scene, although then like it lends itself to hilarity too.
He didn't earn his wings for you in this film. Is that what you're saying?
Not.
Yeah. Okay.
But like Kemp is such a wuss. Like he is just the worst. Like first he's trying to steal Claude Rains' girl, and he's just a schmuck. And then he's like the absolute biggest coward, like sissy pants in the world. And he's begging Dr. Cranley, like, please come save me. And he's like, you know, it's like 2 a.m. and you know, I'll be there after coffee. Like, you'll be fine. Just go to bed. And so there is that. It does lend itself to some fun dialogue and some fun scenes, but I was just like, no.
I just loved, and they did not make much of it, but I guess that's the kind of the puck humor of James Whale. So Rains like sneaks in and turns off the radio report about the killer homicidal maniac, and they show Kemp sitting there, and there is this giant freaking like 2 foot by 2 foot portrait of Gloria Stewart, who is the fiance of the Invisible Man, like sitting on Kemp's mantle. It's like it's the most hilarious thing. It's like, wow, you can't even like hide that a little bit, like
right?
Like, even make it subtle that you're trying to steal her.
Yeah, I don't normally get thrown by typecasting, but I think because I only know this actor from The Invisible Man and It's a Wonderful Life. It's like it's so hard.
Wasn't he the dad in Shadow of a Doubt?
Oh, maybe he was.
I feel like he was. And then
Joseph Cotton pulls my focus so much in that movie. I don't really notice.
But I'm pretty sure he's the dad, and he's basically like Clarence if he was a dad. So like it works.
Yeah.
Because he's not asked to be anything that he's not. But here he's trying to be like all serious. And
I just want to know why they didn't get Edward Van Sloan, because we've already seen Edward Van Sloan in The Mummy, and we saw Edward Van Sloan in Dracula, we saw Edward Van Sloan in Frankenstein. Every movie he's some kind of scientist or a professor or some kind of brainiac. And I'm like, was he busy? Was he doing like a Western down the street and couldn't make it up to the lot for this? Because I just
right. It really been in like a week worth of work. It doesn't have that many scenes. Like they could have.
Well, the whole movie is, as John said, the movies back then filmed in 2 months. I mean, it was like boom. It was your 9 to 5 job Monday through Friday. But I just it's funny too, because just in general about old movies, it is interesting to see the people who have, I guess, star quality or a timelessness that we can still really love their performances. And then there are the people who are just stilted and wooden and just awful. And the actor who plays Kemp, for instance, is one of those, like, I mean, he's even got the little nasty pencil mustache. I'm just like, for God's sake, man, take that brilliantine out of your hair and take some acting lessons, because you suck. And I think it's much as I love old movies, for every like Myrna Loy or William Powell or Jimmy Stewart you have who just could be in movie today and seem modern and seem, accomplished and great. You've got these like, and they're not character actors, because I love my Una O'Connor. I love my character actors. Even the maid in this one, the Tilly, love her. She's in a bunch of movies and she's always exactly the same, but she comes on and you're like, yay, it's her. Love my character actors, but it's that mid-range men and women who are just bland and forgettable and nothing. And
but maybe it's my bias, because I love and adore Claude Rains. Like I have always had a crush on him, and even you don't even see him and he steals the whole movie. So like anybody next to him is going to be like kind of boring.
But I mean, you could pick any old movie and there's always like, here's Katharine Hepburn and here's Cary Grant, and there's some like, other woman who's some blonde, wavy-haired thing in a slinky dress who is, her acting is laughable.
Well, or like that guy,
and she's forgettable, and
that guy in Philadelphia Story that Katharine Hepburn's going to marry, and you're like, this guy, like you're totally getting back with Cary Grant. I don't care what he did.
Yeah, exactly. Even Jimmy, somebody just not
right,
boring dude. Yeah,
but that's it.
I think it's much as I love my old movies. I can see why some people are like, they're horrible because everyone is so awful. Well, the stars were great, and the character actors were great. It was that mid-level, B picture, trying to build them up so they could be a star crew that suck. And I don't even know his name. Whoever played Kemp is the poster boy for that whole motif. All righty. Any other dislikes before we pop into some individual favorites?
One thing with the character itself of the Invisible Man, I like it and I don't like it at the same time, is the fact that he switches from manic to sane sometimes within the same sentence. And sometimes it's really hard to follow. Like when, what's her name? I'm sorry, I'm blanking. When Flora finally confronts him and like, come back with us, we'll solve this. Everything will be fine. And I love you. It's basically, I love you. I want to do this, but I can't because I'm crazy and I'm going to take over the world. And they're going to offer me millions of dollars for this formula. And I'm going to be rich and I will rule the world. And it's really bizarre to me, and it's probably more a story element than a performance element. But that is where I kind of feel like the script fails a little bit. It's a minor thing. The other thing is I really wish Flora's dad would have told her, eventually you're going to be on a boat one day, young lady, and make room for make room for the guy that you fall in love with, and don't throw the diamond in the sea. I had no idea that was her. I had no idea she was modern day Rose.
I was just talking to Liam about this. I don't know if it's like the makeup that they put on her in this movie, but like, you know, if you look at like my grandmother, if you look at how I knew her as an old lady, but I see pictures of her when she was young, you can still tell it's the same person.
Yeah.
And Rose, like, you don't see it at all. And I don't know if it's like the makeup or what, but I still can't believe it.
It's funny because Gloria Stewart, she did The Old Dark House the year before this with Whale, and she's good in that, and she's good in this. And I think it's the only two movies I can think of she did before Titanic, because she never quite broke through. But she looks not like herself, and certainly not like Kate Winslet, but she looks more like herself than she did in The Old Dark House. And I think in this one, they were trying to kind of glam her up a little bit with that really shiny lipstick and the wavy hair and all that. But what a career. I mean, to like do this, and then 2 giant special effects movies of their time, and she was in 2 of them.
Absolutely.
All right.
I will say it is funny when Claude Rains finally does appear, the amount of makeup, like the eyeshadow alone. He's got the whole like Maybelline series on his face, like lipstick, the whole thing. It's intense.
It's a mess a little bit. And I'm going to push back a little, John, on your, although I absolutely agree with the makeup. Holy cow. But I like kind of the whipsaw way he'd be like completely calm and rational and then like spin out like 1 second later. I think because we cannot see his features and we don't get kind of the whole performance, he had to do it all with his voice. But I kind of liked that because it made him more scary to me, and more, because I mean, first of all, talk about a villain. He kills well over 100 people. He crashes a train. I mean, Dracula.
That's insane.
He's got like a huge body count. That's intense.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Dracula and Frankenstein and the Mummy, they kill a few people, but it's like it's revenge, or they didn't know better. You've got to have blood somehow, and so you accidentally bite them. But
they're all done off screen too. These are actually on-screen killings.
And the Invisible Man is just so violent. I mean, he like bashes that cop in the face with the bench. I mean, that was kind of hard to watch even all these years later. I was still kind of like, ow, like that.
Well, throwing the innkeeper down the stairs, like those are stone stairs. That's gonna hurt.
But I like the fact if he had been raving loon the whole movie, that would have been tiring and boring. But I like the fact that he'd start off and be having like a normal conversation, and you're like, okay, he's gonna say like, you know what, that might be a good idea. I'll find a cure, and but then all of a sudden he's just like, and then I will kill you all. It's like it's such a crazy. It makes him really off-putting and disturbing, and I kind of like that. Because
that's true.
I like how you're kind of with him at the beginning though, because it's like, all I want is to be left alone. Why do people keep coming in my room? Right. Like you don't even knock.
Well, because he has that lovely scene where he has his head in his hands and he's like, I just want to go back. And you feel for him. But I think if we'd seen him, it would have played different. But I liked the fact that you never knew if you were getting like crazy homicidal freak or calm rational doctor. It was kind of a fun jump.
That's fair, because he does have one of the best lines ever when he's sitting there, and I think he's in Kemp's room or something. I forget who he's in, but he's like, just remember, I'm strong and I will strangle you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was somewhere he also says like, and I'll find you. It's like, I will find. It's like, okay, like creeping me out. Yeah. My favorite line in the movie, I should have mentioned it. We were talking about humor. When the people are calling up the police department and just describing all the things they've seen, and the one man is going off about it did this and it did this, and the cop is like, you put more water into it next time.
Yes.
I just thought
put more water in your whiskey.
Yeah, so great. It was just hilarious.
Why are you smiling like that?
I just like to smile. Smiling's my favorite.
Make work your favorite. That's your favorite, okay?
Okay.
Work is your new favorite.
Fine.
All right, let's do some favorite characters. Amber has thrown me for a loop by not picking Mrs. Hall, the wonderful Una O'Connor. So I'm going to start with you, Amber. Who is your favorite character then?
I mean, I kind of did pick her for like the MVP of the whole entire movie. I'm just saying. But this may be a little bit of a cheat, but my favorite characters are like the townspeople and like the police officers and like just all these random characters that are having these reactions. Like the guy that he hears the cat and he thinks that it's the Invisible Man and he like freaks out, and the housekeeper
Yeah.
that sees the pants running down the street. Like if I saw a pair of pants just running at me, like I would probably freak out too, and she just loses her mind. So I love all those secondary characters, those townspeople, and the way they're trying to figure out how to catch him, and they're walking with their hands, holding their hands, but then they're like, but you have to stay close together so you can't get between you. And like the whole thing is just absurd.
I'm with you on the extras and the character people. I had read in an earlier film he did, actually his first film, Journey's End, but he continued it. James Whale was English, and there was a large community of actors in Hollywood who were English. A bunch of them had come right at the beginning of the sound era because they could all speak beautiful, proper English and could be heard properly, especially if they were on the stage. And so the transition to sound was going to be their big thing. Well, there were too many of them, and a lot of them didn't get work. And Whale, in most of his movies, he knew, like that wonderful scene in the bar, where in the pub at the beginning, where they kind of pan across, and there's the fellas, and then there's the ladies, and he does similar thing in his other films too. Almost every one of those people were people that Whale knew or had worked with on stage in England, and he brought them out so that they could like get a paycheck, basically. And so, and they did have wonderful wizened old faces and just looked great. But this was not like the regular central casting. We need 150 English peasants to show up, and a lot of them were people who were turn of the century stage actors in London, and now we're on the, on relief because of the Depression or whatever. And so I think it's a lovely gesture that he got these wonderful faces and these character people to play the piano playing guy and the guy who was putting the money and all who were mostly people who he knew and he wanted to give them some work.
Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful story. I love that.
I know, James Whale's so awesome. I love him. So all right, you did the townspeople. I
have to watch Gods and Monsters and cry again.
Yes, yeah. I'm saving that one up as I've been kind of simultaneous with this series. I've been watching some of Whale's other pictures along the way to kind of build my way up to watching that one last again. And again, having, to your point, having a good cry and all that. Such a good movie. All righty. So John, favorite character?
I really like Constable Jaffers. He's like the only one that's like taking this matter seriously and sensible. That when they first start the investigation, like, wow, and he points out, like, if he takes the rest of his clothes off, we're never going to find this guy.
I love that line.
But it's pure logic. Nobody has thought about some of this stuff that could go on, and he's the guy that thinks about it. They're like, well, we'll paint the top of the wall. Well, he'll smell that. We can't do that. He's actually being very rational about a very irrational situation.
And the chief of police is just trying to prove that it's not happening at all.
Right,
exactly.
But yeah, I really liked him as a character because, like I said, the sanity in the midst of the insanity was nice to see. You needed a calm, rational head.
Yes, for sure.
That is fantastic. I was torn between Mrs. Hall just because she's a scene stealer, and she's just such a great character. But I love when she's like first letting him in the room, and she's like trying to tidy up the fireplace and all that, and she keeps like staring at him and making little faces and sniffing. And anyway, she's great. But I think I'm gonna go with Jack Griffin himself with The Invisible Man, just because this was Rains' first picture he did. He was brought out by Whale discovered Charles Laughton and brought him out from England. Laughton had done films in England, but brought him out to Hollywood for The Old Dark House, and Laughton went on, of course, to Academy Awards and Mutiny on the Bounty and all those things. And then Witness for the Prosecution, which is brilliant.
With Una.
Yes, of course. But then he also got Claude Rains out to Hollywood, and then all of a sudden, a couple years later, he's doing Adventures of Robin Hood. He's doing Casablanca. So I mean, Wales new talent, and I think that what could have been a kind of a thankless one-dimensional part, through the physicality of it and through the use of his amazing voice, I think that Claude Rains did a really great job bringing to life a character that basically is a suit of clothes or some band-aids and not much else. And like I said, as I mentioned earlier, I loved how he would just turn on a dime in like mid-sentence from like, oh, well, I'll use my scientific mind and solve this, and then I'll kill you all. It was so great. I love those like whip snaps. And I think a lesser actor who was less commanding and had less power in his voice would not have given us a film like this that we would love. But yeah, to your point, Amber, the whole like makeover thing at the end was a little creepy and weird, even by Hollywood standards.
Yeah.
All righty, let's do favorite scene, and I will start with John this time. John, what was your favorite scene in this movie?
My favorite scene is the first time the Invisible Man decides to run amok through the town.
Oh my God, that was mine too.
I love that. He rips the guy's hat off. How's that for a haircut, Harry? And steals the bicycle. And granted, you can see the bicycles on tracks going down the road. But still, again, I look for that type of thing. That's just how my mind works. But it still works. And that whole scene is just anytime he decides to just run amok and strip naked and run through a town, like you mentioned earlier, when she sees the pants skipping down the street and he's singing a children's song. He breaks into the bank and steals the cash drawer and, money from the Invisible Man and all this stuff. When he, to Robert's point, he goes, pardon the pun, balls out crazy. He goes balls out crazy, and it's really fun to watch.
Nice. It's funny about the nudity bit too. You probably saw it, Amber. They mentioned it in the making of documentary on the DVD. Physical media is better. You get bonuses. But they talk about how in this film, yes, if he wants not to be seen, he has to take his clothes off. It's sort of a necessity. As the movies went on, and we had, Return of Invisible Man and whatever, all the other ones after that, as the narrator of the documentary said, gradually they became about nudity. So where finally we had an invisible woman, and there's this long protracted sequence of her basically taking off her stocking. So there's this endless, gorgeous leg going all the way up to her waving in front of the camera in silk stockings, and it's gradually coming off. And they said that the 40s Invisible Man film became this whole idea of, ooh, but you know what? They're not just invisible, they're naked too. And so there were lots of bathtubs with bubbles and silhouettes behind screens and all these ways they could, it's the 40s, it wasn't even the 70s, but where they could skirt showing very suggestive for the time body parts, primarily women somehow, even though they're supposed to be Invisible Man, but somehow the women got into it too. And I thought that was kind of a hilarious little sidebar to this one. Yes. They do not lean into that, whether it's balls out or not. We don't ever know. We don't ever see a shadow or silhouette. It's all left to our beautiful imaginations. Okay, yeah, my favorite scene, I'm going to circle back, but we're all kind of clustering around the same part of the film. I just like the opening scene with him in the snow and wiping off the sign, and then the wonderful scene in the pub where we get to kind of pan across and see all the habitués of the pub, and then he enters and he wants his room, and it's just so great all the way up to where he gets into the, talk to Una, and she bustles out and does all her stuff. And then they get up into the room, and she's trying to pepper him with questions, and he's just gruff, and
oh, he's such an ass.
Yeah. And I just that whole setup of just lingering on some of the character actors' faces in the pub, and these people have never seen anything like an Invisible Man. Well, I guess they couldn't have seen anyway. But it's this homey little pub in the middle of nowhere on a snowy night. And then all of a sudden, this launches in. But it could have been just cut, oh, look, here's a town. I'm coming in the pub. I'm going up to my room. But we spend a couple minutes in that, just kind of soaking up the environment and the atmosphere. And it's just so lovely and moody. It's one thing that Whale does a lot of his films have those shots where he just lingers on people's faces, or he gives you what the experience was like to be in that place. And I just think he does such a nice job with that, that it is pretty sensational. Although my runner-up scene when they are doing the hunt for him, and the one fellow is being pulled by his legs, and someone else is all the different little tricks and flips and being pushed over the cliff and all that. There's some fun stuff there in that scene with the seeing how he kind of taunts all the people who are trying to find him. All right. And I think we've covered this a little bit already, but let's go back round and we'll start again with Amber for this one. Do you have a favorite remake or alternate version or other invisibility type film? You mentioned a whole bunch earlier with near miss invisibility films. You want to share some of those, or what are you going to watch next if you don't want to see anything?
Well, from the rewatch that I did today, I landed on Hollow Man as the one that I liked the best, that I felt was the best Invisible Man kind of story. You got the potion, you got him going crazy, you've got a great disappearing scene. That, they just used that new computer technology to the hilt. So that one was the one that I thought was even though it's, kind of schlocky and campy or whatever, but I thought it was the best. But I love this idea of like, okay, now what else has invisibility in it? Like, what else would count? Does Fantastic Four count? It's magic. Yes. It's Magic Charlie Brown. Like, he full on gets disappeared by a magician. Yeah.
Well, and don't forget The Incredibles. We got Invisigirl in that one. So yeah, there's a lot.
So yeah, I like this. How big a list can you make? That's kind of a challenge.
You've got my mind reeling now. I'm like going back over like everything, and
right.
Anyway,
when they threw out Predator, that was the one that really got me. I was like, "Hell no, it is!
It is. It definitely is,
and a really good one too."
Yep. H.G. Wells, a man ahead of his time.
Yes,
everything can go back to him. Him and Jules Verne. They got it. Anyway, all right, John, how about you? Do you have a favorite remake or kind of another invisible story you like?
I mean, like Amber said, I really like Hollow Man for a lot of the stuff that they address in it. Like, there's one scene in particular where Kevin Bacon is screaming about not being able to sleep because his eyelids are transparent and he can't ever.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's something you never consider because we have the exact opposite in this movie where Rains lays down and goes to sleep. You see the pajamas crawl into bed, but I'm sitting there and I'm watching this and I'm like, how's he going to sleep? He can't shut out the lights. So I like that they address some of the practical stuff in Hollow Man like that. And I really like the newest one with Elizabeth Moss, just because it's a different take on the story.
Yes.
We don't always get that. And I always want to see somebody else's take on something that I love, because if they do it right, they're going to give me something I never thought about, and it's technologically based. It's a very dark story. I mean, the Invisible Man, or the actor that plays the quote unquote Invisible Man, and he's just a bad dude. He's not a good guy. There's no
crazy. And I went into that movie with like zero expectations. I thought, this is going to be some crummy thing Elizabeth Moss did, like to make some money for vacation or whatever. And it turned out to be so good.
And if I remember right, and if I remember right, it was released during the pandemic, so it never really got theater time too. It was, and much to its dismay, because I think it would have been more successful had it been able to do that. But that being said, it's a great story. It's definitely a sleeper, and it's one that after we watch this, I'm like, I really need to make time to watch that again. It's so hard for me to find time to watch movies nowadays, but I definitely want to see that one again.
Nice. I have two. One was a mistake. When I was younger, I loved all these Universal horrors since I was a kid, and I was at the library. Thanks, Mom, for taking me every week, and picked up Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, and thought this is going to be cool, like another version of the Invisible Man. Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison is a very serious novel about a black man in the 1950s, based on Ellison's own experience, who is not seen because he is, it was a watershed early African-American novelist book before Toni Morrison and before Alice Walker and before, a lot of them, James Baldwin. Ellison came out, and Invisible Man, at the time, I was like, "Puh! There are no serums. There are no, where are my beakers, my test tubes?" And I thought it was dumb, but I was also 9 and naive and pretty damn white. I did go back to it in high school, and I was like, this is a lovely book, but it's a metaphor. He's not really an invisible man. So do not head there, sci-fi and horror fans, because it's not what you will want. Although you might enjoy it anyway. No, I'm going to make this a trifecta and also pick Hollow Man.
Yay!
Partly because it is my 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. This was one of the very first movies my sister did CG for.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was with Sony at that point, and came home with horror stories, and somebody in the cast was sick or ill or something for weeks, and so the production got held up. And
Elizabeth Shue, she tore her Achilles tendon.
Yeah, but I remember my sister came, telling us, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, we've all been laid off for 6 weeks. I'm never going to work again." And his studio hates this movie anyway. They hate Paul Verhoeven. Studios always hate Paul Verhoeven, except when he does big smash hit movies, and they like him.
Right, and makes him $1 gajillion.
Yeah, and I had loved him from The Fourth Man and some of his Dutch films. I just think he's such a great director. But no, I probably would not have seen a Kevin Bacon sci-fi horror Invisible Man movie back in the day, but I went out of loyalty to my sister, and it's good. I've only think I've watched it once since then, but I just have a fondness for it because I got to hear a lot of stories about on the set and what they were doing. She didn't go on the set a lot because she was CG, but there was a huge amount of work they had to do with the plates they would use back then. And some of the scenes, they had to have like 16 or 17 camera angles the way they wanted to do them. And for every one of those, the camera had to be exactly in the right place for them to do, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, do their stuff the way they could do it. They had to build stuff and fill stuff. It was very technically complicated. And so she got to be on the set a little, but primarily she just did computery stuff and all that. But yeah, that my little personal attachment to that one. All righty. Another winning film. These Universal horrors are holding up all these, close on 100 years later. So we're going to give this one a rating of 1 to 5. What did we decide? Tots of Gin in honor of Una, or was it going to be Frozen Footprints? I think Tots of Gin. Let's cheers to that. So all righty, Amber, on a 1 to 5 of gin, how much are you going to guzzle down for this movie?
I'm going to give it a 4. Like I said, I watch it for Una. That is why I put this movie in. I enjoy it for Claude Rains and the gags and all the other things we've spoken about. It's not my absolute favorite of the Universal horror films, but it's definitely way up there when we do our rewatches. It's usually like the second or third one we watch.
How about you, John? 1 to 5 tots of gin. How much are you going to get?
I'm not a drinker. But I'm gonna.
You can do Footprints in the Snow. Then you can have.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna line up 4 shots, but somebody's gonna have to carry me out afterwards.
I was gonna say I'll be asleep after one. So.
Yeah, I don't drink.
This is all metaphorical,
right? I will say I have to give it 4 solely based on the fact of the technological innovations that this movie made for the time. It's incredible, and like we said earlier, probably 90% of the special effects shots still hold up to this day. Obviously you can tell how they're done, but they work. And as I said earlier, the performances I feel are better across the board in this movie than they have been in the previous ones we've talked about. and it just shows the amount of faith that the studio had in basically creating a horror universe. And it's probably one of the first shared universes we ever saw on film. And for those reasons alone, I have to give it a 4.
Nice. I'm going to follow up with my 4 as well. We drained the whole bottle pretty much. I think, kind of piggybacking on what you both said, I think it's to me it's one of the lesser Universal monster movies. I don't ever think of it like I do Werewolf and Mummy and Creature. I think because it is a little more sci-fi, and he's a human. He's not a vampire or a creature or a thing. So in that category, I always kind of forget it's there. But I really, it holds up, and I love it because I love the James Whale directing, and I love his little supporting characters he uses in all his movies, like Fry and Una, and it's a good picture. It's just kind of weird to me, but it sits with these other films because it's so unlike them in a lot of ways. But it is a great representative of early 30s films that are really well made and good. So I give it a solid 4. The sequels, you just keep knocking one point off for each sequel till a couple of them end up in the negatives by the time we get to like the 4th or 5th one in the Universal ranking. Sorry, guys, but the Frankensteins get better. The Draculas kind of are all over the map. The Invisible Men just keep getting worse and worse as they go on. So sorry about that. Anyway, thank you so much, Amber, for jumping in at the last minute. I knew I had to say Una and you would come cackling, but
yes.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a hoot.
It was. And thank you again, John, for following up with me through all these different Universal horrors. One more to go, The Mummy, and we will have wrapped those up for this year.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I will see you next week in Egypt.
Ah, nice. I like that. My brain is racking for what I'm going to have to either wear or do or whatever. Anyway, thank you.
I want full Steve Martin King Tut regalia.
Well, that's what I was thinking, but it's like unless this goes on Patreon, plug, we have a Patreon that is awesome. For as little as $1 a month, you get bonus features like seeing what we're wearing while we're talking. Anyway, we're all dressed. There is no Invisible Man. Actually,
I don't know about you guys, but as far as I'm like Claude Rains right now, I'm Winnie the Poohing it right now.
All right, and okay, I lost my notes. Here's my notes. Okay, thank you, listeners, for listening to us as we chat about our favorite Universal horror movies and sometimes go sideways from that. If you like what you hear and want to know more about this terrific podcast, we are on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Discord. As I mentioned, we have a terrific Patreon that has unedited episodes, bonus episodes, all kinds of fun stuff on there. Coming up in future months, we're going to do some zombie films to kind of keep this creepy season thing going on. And then we're going to have a whole bunch of top 7s piling up in December and after. I think there's 7 top 7s coming, and there are going to be some surprises and some fun lists there. If you love our top 7s, we also have a new thing on YouTube where different hosts are running through in just a very short video their top 7 favorite, I don't know, could be coffee mugs, could be ways to grill, could be, Amber, what did you just do?
Journalism movies.
Journalism movies. It was so good. Yes, I was
surprised that there were some you hadn't seen.
I know. But now I've got a list. So thank you for that. See, listeners, you've got to watch these things. You can learn more. Anyway, and of course, as we always say, be sure and remember that physical media is always better than streaming. Thanks so much. Good night, everybody.
The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson. Recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.